So my journey, if you would have asked me where I would have been in 25 years after graduating, I would never have seen where I am now. It would never have come close to what I'm doing now. So let me take you through this journey. So after graduating in 98, I went on to complete a residency at the University of Virginia and stayed on to practice for an additional 2 years. After that, found myself in Atlanta, Georgia, where I took on a clinical specialist role at Emory Healthcare. And combined with those 2 years at UVA, those after 9 years of clinical experience, I found myself a little bit burned out, actually a lot burned out. And I was looking for something new. And I have to be honest in that I probably put myself in that situation in that I did not have a good work-life balance, and I can look at that in hindsight. So that's one of the key things I always try to tell students is make sure that you have a good work-life balance, because the last thing you want to do is burn out before it's your time. And even after 9 years of experience, could I have been there longer? Maybe, but I did find myself at that crossroads of wanting to do something more. So then I was lucky and very fortunate to find myself going into the pharmaceutical industry in 2008. And it's one of those things, which again is going to be a theme. I took a chance. I took a leap of faith. In fact, being here in Atlanta, when I applied for this position at Cubist Pharmaceuticals, I was supposed to move to San Francisco. I was scared. It was going to be something new. I'd only lived in the South, and here I was going to make a huge leap and start all over in a different part of the country. Well, lo and behold, I interviewed, I got accepted, and 2 weeks later, I was having the movers to come out and give me estimates, and it was Labor Day weekend. I'll never forget. And I get a call from the director who was supposed to be my boss, and he called to say that the girl who was covering Atlanta had just resigned and that the Atlanta position was now open. And if I wanted to stay in Atlanta, I could. You can imagine my excitement, and the lesson learned from that, and I still hold today, is don't be afraid to take chances because you never know where it's going to lead. So an amazing 7 years at Cubist Pharmaceuticals. I learned a ton about the business. I took the opportunity to learn the different departments. And again, I'm going to go through some of the different areas that you can really think about. So in 2015, the company was acquired by Merck Pharmaceuticals. And having been at a small pharmaceutical company and watching it grow from when I first started around 200 to where it was over 1,000 in that 7 to 8 year span that I was there, I didn't want to go into a big pharmaceutical where I felt like I would be lost in a number, especially as hard as I'd worked. One of the experiences that I had at Cubist, including moving overseas for 6 months to the United Kingdom and helping to start a global branch in the UK. So again, just a myriad of different experiences that I got, and that one experience really showed me that I can go out and do anything that I put my heart to and not to be afraid to do something new. So I soon left Cubist and found myself at a very small, small pharmaceutical company called Tetraphase, where they were developing a new intravenous tetracycline. Well, again, when you make that leap of faith into pharmaceuticals, you have to understand that there is there are pluses and minuses. So pluses, there are experiences you're going to get, but the minuses is the uncertainty of these pharmaceutical companies. So within a year, once the data for one of the clinical trials came out, I found myself jobless for the first time in my life because they had negative data. And the toll that took on me to be, we're all pharmacists. We're supposed to have jobs at all times. And here I was for the first time in my career without a job. I had so much anxiety. I told myself I was going to write a book of A to Z of how to handle being jobless, especially when you have a professional degree. And the A starting for anxiety. I mean, I had it all the way through Z, including wine and which wines to buy on a budget and things like that. So luckily, along the way and journeys and people that I'd met, I found myself consulting for a little bit from a former colleague of mine from Cubist Pharmaceuticals, who is now the chief medical officer at a small company called Achaogen. and they were developing a new aminoglycoside. So he asked me to come on and help their medical affairs and get it started up and help them in the clinical development as they were putting together their data and how to talk about the data and some strategy. So I consulted with them for 6 months and they brought me on full time, where again, I was able to help build out medical affairs until the vice president came along. Great experience, got to build a medical affairs team, found myself leading part of the team, and so got some more leadership experience in that role. Loved every moment of it until the company went bankrupt. So being in the antibiotic space, compared to maybe some of the other spaces out there, there is, and that's a whole different lecture in itself. There comes uncertainties of, is this antibiotic going to succeed? That I had to deal with, this was a new antibiotic, so there, and it was for very resistant bugs. So they put it on the shelf, it didn't get used, and so the company wasn't making any money. And hence here we were, the first antibiotic company ever to go bankrupt. So I had a lot of great experiences from that. So here I was in 2019 at a crossroads, having worked for 3 different companies, understanding that this was an area that I had my heart in because I had a critical care background. I was able to bring in infectious diseases and just gained a lot of experience and a lot of meeting a lot of folks along the way. So I kid you not, 5 years ago today, I just got back from ID Week 2024. It was 5 years ago where a former colleague of mine from Cubist Pharmaceuticals, who worked in the clinical development department, we were sitting on a couch. She was consulting for a company, and I was consulting for a company called Entasis Therapeutics. And we were sitting there discussing why are we duplicating our efforts? She was helping clinical development, I was helping medical affairs. And we looked at each other and we're like, why don't we start a company? Why don't we do this? She, a mother of 2, had just left another pharmaceutical company, and she was at that crossroads. We looked at each other and are we going to do this? And our final thoughts to each other, and it was our motto initially, is let's do this. So hence the beginning of Scientific and Medical Affairs Consulting, or SMAC. So one thing I want to point out is that along the way, I had a lot of great mentors. And the first mentor that I had that really made a huge impact on my life was Kenneth Leeper, who was my critical care pulmonary attending. Worked with him for 7 years, and he really embraced me as a pharmacist when I joined Emory. He allowed me to be part of his research team. He allowed me to have publications and work with him on many different things within the organization, within Emory. He was part of the P&T committee and critical care committee, and he allowed me to have a big voice there. So really mentored me along the way, and I cannot thank him enough for everything he did to me. Taught me how to be a great clinician. And to this day, I will always have him in my mind as I'm at a crossroads of what do I want to do? What would I do if this was my mother or my father? And that was something that he instilled in me. The next mentor I had was in the pharma realm, which was Luke Mendez-Vigo, who was my boss. He was my champion. He knew, I went to him and said, this is what I would like to get out of this in my career with you. And he made it happen. So that's one of those things where I always tell to folks, voice where you want to be, talk about it, find that mentor, let them know and work with them. Don't let them have all the answers. You also come up with your own ideas of how to get those goals met. And it's because of him, I gained all this different experience within the pharma realm, and I can't thank him enough for being my champion. So I used to joke around with him when he said, oh, I have an opportunity for you, which I said, AKA means I have some work for you. And then lastly, my PIC, or my partner in crime, is Judith Steenbergen, who's my partner, and she's the president of SMAC. She is a clinical developer by heart, a microbiologist by training, developed a number of antibiotics that are in use today, starting from daptomycin to ceftolozane, tazobactam. And it's because of her that I've learned the business side. She was very business savvy. When she said, let's do this, she took the helm of this and, getting us through the LLC process, figuring out how we're going to do insurance, how we're going to give ourselves a retirement fund, through the SEP IRA, things like that. I've learned so much from Judith. So across all this, I want you to know that it's great and it's important to be a continuous learner. And I love that how these series are helping you to see what others have done and give you an opportunity to ask questions as you think about your next steps in life. So just a little bit background about SMAC and who we are and what we do. What we like to say is that we provide scientific and commercial expertise that can be leveraged to support drug development all the way from pre-IND through phase 4, including commercialization. My role when I go in, because Judith has a different role, she works primarily through the pre-IND to phase 2. I usually come in around phase 2 and work through phase 4. Is what we like to do is bridge the commercial folks with the development folks, because those are two different departments within a pharmaceutical organization. We are that middle common ground that can help translate what development is doing into something that's palatable that the commercial organization can go out and use when they're talking to their customers. So what we do is build consensus and develop the partnerships that you need to have within an organization. We try to prevent that siloed mentality that you can often even see within a hospital setting and many other settings that you probably can work in. But how do we bring everybody to have a voice at the table? To continue again, our little motto goes along with the puzzle piece that we're here to help put the pieces together for you. So we like to be data driven, and we have expertise amongst our group to discuss not only the science, not only talk about the medical affairs, which is the external portion, but also commercial expertise to help again bridge all of this. When I go through our team, you'll see where we are in terms of who we've brought on over the years. So where it started off as 2 people, we are now at 9 people, and with expertise all across the board from commercialization, again, all the way to development. So we have 3 things that we like to say we do. We connect the science to the clinic. We align within an organization. We collaborate. That's the big one, again, amongst the different parts of the organization, and we help build that consensus, which I talked about. Now, here's a little bit of a busy slide, but it's just to show you what my counterparts are involved with when we are talking about drug development and life cycle management, because it's not just black and white, as it's many different moving parts that all need to come together. So when it starts off from discovery, we have expertise and some experience within the regulatory and microbiology realm, again, because that is kind of our bread and butter. When you see the word TPP, that's a target product profile. So you have to think about when you have a product at the very beginning, what is the profile you want it to look like? What's that package insert going to be looking like? So this is 10 years before a drug is even approved, that you have to start thinking, what do I want this profile to look like? And how do I get there? What are the studies we need to conduct in order to get to this product profile? Once you start getting to your phase 1 and phase 2 studies, again, you have to have, and again, because we're in the antibiotic realm, we think about devices and antibiotic susceptibility testing. We think about surveillance. Again, that's where Judith has her expertise, so she helps with that. It's in this time that you start thinking about your scientific strategy. So how are you going to differentiate between what's already out there and how are you going to be different? We also provide input into all these clinical research strategies. So putting together plans and working with the investigators within the organization to get to where they need. And then most importantly as well, publication strategy, which is key from here on out to make sure that the data that you're generating is also making it out to the public. And it's key information that folks will utilize in order to discern whether this product is something that they want to be using within either a formulary or physicians and infectious diseases, that they need to have the full data package in order to make those kinds of decisions. So moving on to phase 3, again, now you can see the picture getting bigger. And this is really where we come in. This is our sweet spot where we discuss regulatory. We work with the NDA, but between myself and two of my other colleagues and Judith, we've worked over 8 NDAs at this point. We've also been in front of the FDA to help when some of these companies go in front to discuss the data. Again, continuing with the scientific strategy, continuing with the microbiology AST strategy, again, different parts depending on the different phase that you're in, and then continuing with the publication strategy. You continue, and this is where we develop content. And this is where I really, I feel like I have my expertise is taking the data and discerning it and putting it into a lingo, in a sense, that the company can utilize so that they're singing from the same songbook, as we like to say. So we develop a lexicon and verbiage that they want to be using. We also start looking at competitors. We look at to make sure that there's a differentiation there. And if not, how can we differentiate ourselves? We, in terms of microbiology, again, continuing to think about the strategy around susceptibility testing. This is when you start building out medical affairs. So your medical affairs team usually comes in around phase 3, looking at the needs and where this product's going to fit. And then again, a lot more around publication strategy, training that goes into it, and working with your commercial colleagues at this point. And then once you get to phase 4, that's where your label is expanded, or you do post-marketing surveys. So you think about, again, the strategy and building out commercially and helping those folks that, again, bridging everybody together. So again, this is just meant to show you that there is a lot of work that goes into the development of a drug and its life cycle. But this just shows you where pharmacy can be involved and part of my role as being a consultant where I get to be involved. So by no means is this a complete picture of everything that goes into it. So in my time in pharma, where again, I learned a lot clinically, that made me a wonderful or a good MSL because I was able to have discussions with the external healthcare professionals in a peer-to-peer type of manner because I could talk the language, I had the clinical experience, and many of the situations I had used the drug, so be able to talk to the physician. So I cannot stress enough, it's so important to at least have that baseline if you're thinking about a career in pharma, depending on what part. Now, there are many places within an organization, within a pharma organization, that a pharmacist can be involved. So I've put it into 4 buckets. Starting in medical affairs, again, that's the middle group, which falls between clin dev and commercial. You can be a medical science liaison, work in drug information, be a lead for publication planning, be involved in research and be a lead there, be a lead for strategy. You can have an operations role, be a trainer, and be involved in health economics outcomes research. Again, these are all areas that I've come across where there has been a pharmacist in this role. In terms of clinical development, again, within research, as a CRO in operations, pharmacovigilance, I have seen pharmacists taking on these roles. In commercial, I've seen pharmacists in the sales department working, again, as either trainers, marketing, also in HEOR, depending on where it sits within an organization, market analysis, taking the data out there and figuring out, is this something that our product can do well? And again, as a pharmacist, you have this great knowledge base and being able to look at the data and being able to interpret the data and then give output from there. Organizational wise, I've been fortunate to work with a PharmD who eventually became a CEO of a company. They're few and rare out there, but they are out there, so there is that possibility. There's also business development. So as you are going through this business course, that is key in helping, again, to be able to look at an asset. Is this an asset that has potential because you've got the pharmacology background? to be successful, and will it make an impact for the company? And then also government affairs. I've had pharmacists who have been part of the government affairs. A few of my classmates went on to law school, so taking not only that PharmD degree, but went on to have a law degree that helped them to become really good government affairs employees. So where you see the things that are highlighted in blue is where I had an opportunity to get some experience. So within Med Affairs, again, having a champion and a mentor who I told I wanted to learn as much as possible gave me the opportunity to work in all these different areas. And across the 3 different companies that I was I at least got experience in all of these. Even within clinical development, now as a consultant, I get pulled into some of these organizations that are early on. So working with the clinical development group, especially around their phase 3, and putting together, once the data is out there, into a more palatable, as I like to call it, verbiage that can be utilized. In commercial, again, been involved in training commercial folks across the organizations that I worked at, got a chance to work in marketing and got to see how they work, and working with the sales organization, understanding how they're out there, how they're talking to physicians, and supporting them as needed. Organizational wise, I got an opportunity to spend 3 months working with the business development group at Cubist, and got to experience and see how that works in terms of assessing different assets. I can say in that 3 months, I probably assessed 15 different assets with none of those going through, but I was able to offer my expertise opinion based on pharmacology and just input there. And then I also had an opportunity to spend 3 months commuting to Washington, D.C. and working with our government affairs group, learning how they lobby. It was actually the government affairs group at Cubist that was instrumental in passing one of the bills that provided exclusivity to new antibiotics that are currently approved. So they get early proof if they submit under what they call a qualified infectious disease product, they get an additional 7 years of exclusivity. So again, my organization was part of that. And so I got to see that process and how the meetings went with the different parts of the senator, in terms of senators and representatives, and getting this lobbied. So some key advice that I want to give, I wanted to leave this open for a question and answering, because again, you see my journey, you see what the business can be like. It's busy. We have now worked with over 30 companies in that 5-year span. We're trying to branch out outside of infectious diseases. Within infectious diseases, yes, it's enough to keep us busy, but we always have to think ahead of when these products get approved. They may be done with us. So we always have to think at least a year ahead of time. We are constantly out there doing our own business development. So as I was at Infectious Diseases Week this past week, both Judith and I were going around trying to meet with new clients that we don't currently have business with, and letting them know what we can offer. As a small company, we don't have a lot of overhead, so that saves, we pass that savings on to our customers, as opposed to some of the bigger consortium and companies that develop content, provide feedback, but may not, will come with a larger price tag because of the overhead. So my key advice that I give to folks that ask me, as I'm thinking about making a change, as I mentioned previously, my path has not been straight. It was not something I expected. It just happened naturally. I continue to try and learn new things. So it's important to remain open to changes. Yes, it's scary. Yes, I had anxiety, a lot of anxiety along the way, but at the end, everything worked out. So it was a great experience, and I wouldn't change anything. I would also surround yourself with smart people that are much smarter than you. I came out of school maybe a little cocky, because yes, I come out of the UNC School of Pharmacy and I know a lot, and I've learned a lot, and I learned how to think thanks to the amazing professors that I had. But along the way, I learned I was not the smartest person in the room. I found that I thrived around people who are much smarter than me, because it made me want to learn more. So keep yourself in good company around those that are smarter than you. Ask questions and learn. Very important to find a mentor who will champion you. It was in those career spaces where I had longevity. So the 7 years within Emory, the 8 years that I had at Cubis, that I found a champion. It wasn't right away. It takes time to build that relationship and for them to see what you bring to the table. Once you have that engagement, once you have that mentor, you will find yourself going to them, letting them know what it is you want, and then come with a plan of how they can help you get there. Don't expect them to tell you how to do it. They can guide you, but you need to also be there to one to have the decision and how you want to get there as well. Going back to those surrounding yourself with people smarter than you, learn as much as you can from everybody around you. I love how this series is being put together because there are a lot of us pharmacists who are out there doing a lot of different things. Learn about those. Does it interest you? From what I first started off in pharmacy school, where I wanted to be a geriatric pharmacist, nowhere would you have told me I was going to be a critical care pharmacist and then later on to be part owner of a business. So learn as much as you can, ask questions, have fun. I have had fun in every one of my places that I've been at. Yes, I got burned out, but I loved everybody I worked with. I had fun going in. So you should be passionate about everything that you do. And it's once you lose that passion where you perhaps need to reassess, what can I change in order to have fun? Is it something I need to change about myself? Do I need to change where I am? It's that reflection of where you are, but you should be having fun. I think it's very important to be nice to everyone you meet because you never know who is going to be your advocate. It's because of folks that I met along the way that brought me in to eventually become either a consultant or a business partner. Because it's because of them I'm probably where I am now because I was nice. I had good relationships. And when they see that, they will remember you and they will think of you when there's an opportunity. So be nice. It's a small world, especially in my area of pharmaceuticals. If you are specialized and, all the schools of pharmacy, that all the deans know each other, it's really important to have a good relationship and a good reputation. And lastly, I want to say that leap of faith, it goes back to not only remain open to changes, but don't be afraid to take chances. You don't know until you try. As I said, you often often regret not doing something more than you do something. So unless, as I put in here, unless it involves jail time. I've had many students come up to me talking about residency, and it is a commitment. And do I do it? As once was explained to me, and this was actually one of the pharmacology professors at UNC, and I remember having a discussion with him of what I wanted to do in my career. And I was like, I'm thinking of residency. And the way he put it to me, he said, you have a 40, 50 year long career. Let's just put it that way. That 1 to 2 years means absolutely nothing in the long scheme of things. And in fact, can make you a better person. So as you make these decisions, think about the whole part of it. It's easy to think in that tunnel of like what the next 1 to 2 years could look like. But overall, if you don't take that chance, you will regret not doing it more so than doing it. So it's better to have that experience under the belt than not to, because you don't want to regret that. And sometimes I've found colleagues who try to go back and it's a little bit harder. So take that chances, take that leap of faith, have the discussion, talk to people around you, make that informed decision before you make that leap. So I like to end and just saying again, I've never been a natural at what I do. All I do is try, try, try. Thank you. And most importantly, I want to thank this big SMAC team. So Judith, who is my partner in crime, who sat with me on that couch 5 years ago. And then our commercial guy, Rolf Wagner, who has worked and developed and came up with actually ideas of new antibiotics because of his background. So some of the newer antibiotics that are coming out, it's because he actually went to a company and said, you should think about developing this antibiotic with this in combination or what so. So I am so fortunate to work with such amazing people. Again, there's 9 of us now. It goes all the way from operations to clinical development to commercialization. And I am having so much fun. Here is my contact information if you want to reach out directly. I also am on LinkedIn, so I know I've had an opportunity to connect with a number of students over the past few years who are interested in learning a little bit more even about pharma and how I got my career path. So I appreciate and I look forward to actually working with you and mentoring perhaps a few of you along the way. I'm hoping one day to be able to take students. So I know I've talked to Dean Kashuba about my interest there. So hopefully maybe one of you will be an intern for me going forward. And I have lots of projects and lots of teachings that I can provide. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hina. I'll turn it over for any students in the crowd that have questions for Hina.
Hi, I have a question over here. I don't think you can see me, but
I can see you.
okay, cool. How would you say that your clinical expertise helped you out a lot along the way in the pharmaceutical industry?
Yeah, that's a great question. So again, it goes back to being able to have a peer-to-peer conversation with my customers. So understanding how things work, for example, it could be in retail or in pharmacy, understanding the ins and outs of how things even work, then taking that knowledge base, providing it to a lot of the folks in pharmaceutical companies who may not actually have ever set foot in a hospital or been a clinician, and providing that insight. Well, this is how things work within this setting. And then when you are talking to external facing HCPs, you have that value in that, again, you are peer to peer. You've had that experience. I've worked, again, I've worked in a hospital, I've worked in retail, and they actually find that very, it's a lot more engaging. And when they can have that peer to peer discussion of, what it's like to be in their shoes.
Thank you.
Thank you for speaking. I was wondering, you talked a bunch about home work-life balance. What does that look like for you right now?
Oh, so the great thing is I'm still based in Atlanta. Most of my time working with customers is virtual. So I can be anywhere in the world and still get my work done. So where before, in a hospital setting, you have set hours, you have to be there. I went over. So again, that was part of my burnout where I would spend 10 to 12 hours in when I was on critical care services. Now it's because the way our model works, we're project based. As long as I get my work done, and it can be done in 2 or 3 hours, it can be done in 8 hours. It's how I decide to spend my time. So that work-life balance is so much better. Again, because working from home, you have to be a little more disciplined. And because it's very easy to go sit on the couch or go easy to go to, just stare into space, because that's what I dealt with when I first went into pharma. Where, okay, I'm getting to work from home, I'm going to sit in my pajamas, but no, you have to learn to be disciplined. And with that comes the work-life balance.
Oh, thank you. It was nice talk. Since you mentioned about a lot of anxiety in this long process of drug development, then how do you manage your excitement and anxiety in this process?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I can tell you my anxiety is much less now that I don't have a boss. I am my own boss at this point. The anxiety that comes along with is, are we going to get more customers? Or is this going to be longevity? How I manage it, again, it's part of that work-life balance where taking time to, I make sure I exercise every day. I actually block off my calendar for a class so that there can be nothing that goes on during that time. And therefore putting myself first in that situation and my health. Again, because I have that ability to work from anywhere, I can be on vacation and I can work if I want or try to get ahead. So it goes along the way. In terms of the anxiety that I had working, when you do work for a company, this is where, again, that work-life balance is key. It's what I had to learn along the ways. It's okay to say no. We are all high achievers. As pharmacists, we're high achievers and we want to be the best that we can be. And we will usually go above and beyond. And I think that's where I had to learn, and my boss had to say, it's okay to say no, because you can get piled on projects and projects and projects. But it's okay to push back and say, I'm interested, not at this time. So it comes to having that discussion, not with just within yourself, but those around you, and helping to alleviate some of that anxiety.
Hi, Hina. Thank you for talking with us today. I'm actually applying to commercial fellowships right now, so I found what you were talking about with like the intersection of medical and commercial to be really interesting. Are you able to provide any details on like specific projects that you've worked on that you think are especially exciting? I know I'm sure there's lots of confidentiality surrounding it all, but I'm just sort of curious of like some of the specific things that you've done.
So in terms of the commercial side
Or just, I mean, I just think that intersection of medical and commercial is interesting because the way I hear about it is usually like they're very separated, for
Yes.
obvious reasons. So it's just, yeah.
No, that is a great question. And you're right. For the most part, a lot of companies, it is siloed. There's a wall. But when you are internal, you have that capability of working a little bit more with the commercial organization, as opposed to if you are more of the external facing. So like, for example, the MSLs, depending on the company you're at, have no interactions with the sales organization. That tends to be a lot more with the big pharmaceutical companies and the medium size. But when you're small, that's how I started out. I was working with my sales reps. I was out in the field with them. So when you're smaller, you can have that interaction. But to some of your question around some of the projects I got to work with that align with commercial organization includes where the training aspect, where because you're the content expert within Med Affairs, you are going to help train the commercial organization so that they understand what's going on with clinical development, the data that's been generated, and translating it to where they understand it. So a lot of that, in terms of reviewing marketing pieces within Med Affairs, because again, you are content experts. I've sat on what they call medical legal review committees and promotional review committees, where you're looking at the pieces, making sure that you're not making claims, that it's all data driven, and make sure that information is accurate. So those are a few examples that I think have an impact and where they see a lot of value in terms of, especially around the training.
Thank you.
Dr. Patel, thank you for your talk. It comes with a lot of risk. What are some of the things you did to like minimize some of those risks and maximize the benefits of like starting your own business?
Yeah, great question. Because it comes with risk, comes with anxiety. So what I learned, actually, first thing I learned from my residency was from one of the pharmacy directors. And I believe you guys are starting to get a little bit learnings around this about savings. Make sure you start saving early as soon as you graduate, thinking about your 401. I know some of you have loans, so there were sacrifices that I had to make, but I was a great saver, having lost my first job ever and not having money, which I had money, I had savings, but having that anxiety of like, okay, where's my income coming? I'm now at a point where, because I felt like I've done a good job of saving, putting it aside for that rainy day, that now I feel like if I could take this risk because I've done that. So it goes really around you thinking ahead, thinking about your future, thinking about how to save money in terms of being able to, if you are without a job for a little bit, you are still comfortable, you can pay your bills and things like that. And again, I think about athletes and who go out there and they make all this money, but spend it all. I'm like, why? So I remember, I think it was Dean Kashuba or somebody mentioned that, they're trying to teach the students about all the aspects of when you're out there thinking ahead financially, where you need to be. Again, I aligned myself with Judith, who also was financially stable. So we were both able to take this leap.
Well, Hina, I want to thank you again for just a really nice overview to sort of your journey. And by doing that, you were able to share plenty of opportunities for individuals trained as a pharmacist and how they can impact sort of really in the business of healthcare. So very much want to thank you for the opportunity. Wish you were here because you could see all the students that are here, but I'm hopeful many will reach out to you and connect on LinkedIn.
Please do. I mean, I'm at that point where I want to be a good mentor. I want to be there for the future. I mean, maybe one day one of you can take over for me as I sit on the beach and decide not to work anymore.
Well, great. Thank you very much. Let's all thank her.
Thank you.